What's going on, guys? Nabratius is here. Today we have another episode of Pimp My List, this time with Infernal Dwarfs. As promised in January, I am a bit back to Infernal Dwarfs and I want to pay more attention to this army, definitely. Maybe a bit resting after the ATC to 2017 helped, and now I can go back and think about the army again. So I got a list sent by the Englishman, who actually took, I think, second place with it at the side event of the UK Masters, so that's pretty good, congratulations. And let's take a look. The concept is pretty simple. You have the main block of Taurox, the main block of Citadel Guard with Overlord inside most likely. Then you have the Prophet, Vizier, and 2 times Incarnates. So I have to say, I don't like this list type. I really don't. I think it's too crude and it's very simple, very straightforward. It doesn't have much board control. It doesn't have much shooting. The magic is also pretty mediocre, especially considering it has only alchemy. I think the list is pretty solid and it's hard to take it down. So there is definitely that. But I struggle to see how it can earn good points against the good players that can just hide, run around and score some points against things like Incarnates or Taurox. What I think is the problem is that you don't have many things that will encourage your opponent to come closer to you. Usually when I played Infernal Dwarfs, I really enjoyed having those tools, like things like bolt throwers, some catapults, some more diverse or just more magic, because here you have a pretty slow army. Even with Banner of Relentless Company, this is still movement free, so it's pretty easy to get out of decent charge range, at least from the main block. And then the Incarnates are not the fastest around, and with Frenzy you have to keep it all inside the bubble, so that's pretty problematic in my opinion. I think what I would personally do with this list, if I want to keep it more or less the same, is I would definitely exchange either Taurox or one of the unit of Incarnates to some more board control and shooting in the form of all the other small Taurox and some bolt throwers, maybe even the rocket battery, especially because your Prophet still doesn't want to fight, so maybe just give him the Engineer, maybe even Bullhorn of Nancy Bekesh and try to go from that. The main block, while it's good to have it big, maybe you can reduce the number of Citadel Guards and then put some more Flintlocks. And the small detail about the Overlord build, I would say that more important than getting to 1-up, 4-up, it is more important to get Gauntlets of Madzab in, especially with Hatred and with the fact that the Strength 7 really changes stuff a lot. I would say that it's just easier for him to murder stuff then, because it doesn't help if you are survivable if you can't murder stuff. So I got a game with the list, and actually we played really late, and there were a bit of butcherings in this game, but I didn't have time to play another one, so sorry for that. So my opponent was using Warriors of the Dark Gods. He was using 1 unit of Flyers, 2 units of Dogs, 2 units of Wasteland Warriors. Well, at the point that I entered combat, I realized that they are sloth, which was pretty funny. One of them had great weapons and the other one had spiked shields. And you have 2 flying chimeras and the sorcerer on the disc lord. There was a fighty lord in one of the units, but this was the symbol of slaughter lord, not the burning potent lord. He had also the Feldrak Elder, 1 warrior chariot and 5 warrior knights. And this was also the mistake here, because initially the warrior knights had written that they are rough with great weapons, and I was okay with that. And after I charged, I got the information that they are actually just regular warriors with lances. So I would have really preferred them to be rough, as you might be able to see, because then they are only 2-up armor safe, and then I have the additional pluses to hit against them. So that's basically how deployment worked. I decided to go first in this matchup because I wanted to push him and I wanted to deal with his sorcerer pretty fast if I can. He had only 4-up armor save, but I was fine with that. Usually using Flintlocks, it's better to go second, but since you only have 2 units of Flintlocks and I'm not aiming at this game lasting 6 turns, then I don't think this is necessary. So that's basically how I started. Both units of warriors have charges on 11 to the Kadims, but with this positioning I think it's pretty hard for him to push forward, because neither Chimera can get out of line of sight of the Kadims. I have a good range on spells. I did unfortunately only 1 wound to the disc lord, but that's fine. The second Kadims on the right are actually playing pretend, because I didn't want him to be able to march as far as he can. So I was pretending that I'm countering him. In fact, it would be hard for me to make the decision of charge, but it was possible, especially if I get the reroll to wound from alchemy on him. Even though he has rerolls to wounds from flaming, then it cancels out, and I probably can try to take down this Feldrak Elder. What I measured is I measured the 27 inches from my mage, so he cannot frenzy bait me and at the same time not be within my mage range for casting the flammable spell if I want. Obviously I would need to exit the unit, but that's not a problem because he doesn't have much ranged threats anyway. So this concluded my turn 1. In his turn 2, he advanced with the right flank and backed off with the center, and basically not much more happened. So let's go straight off to end of my turn 2. Yeah, this was actually the biggest mistake in the game by my opponent, because he didn't fly his wizard back enough, and I managed to get some spells on him again and just killed him. I think at this point still those Kadims don't have time to reach the warriors. Basically I couldn't position them right here because this would be too easy for the charges for the Feldrak. So I decided to stay in this side and try to zone his units further from my point, and a bit protecting this flank. As you can see, both units of dogs are dead because he decided to chaff my citadels and my Toruks. I got some wounds in the flyers, but they passed the panic check, and basically nothing else happened. In his next turn, he advanced forward, not fearing the Kadims on the right flank, and he advanced his monsters around here. The warriors still backed off, scared of the Kadims, and flyers fortunately failed the march check, so they couldn't chaff the Toruks. Unfortunately for me, with double attacks from Skinning Lash, so 8 hits total, wounding me on 5 up, and then I have 3 up armor save. I got 3 wounds, so I lost one of the Toruks, which was unfortunate, but obviously possible. So on my next turn, I decided to charge both the Kadims and the Toruks inside one of the warriors. I was charging the shield ones, and fortunately for me, the Kadims made it. Unfortunately, the Toruks didn't make it, but it didn't matter. My shooting managed to kill the flyers. The dogs are positioned in such a way that if the Chimera wants to charge, it is unable to overrun into my dwarf's unit, and if the warrior's block wants to charge, it is unable to overrun into warrior's unit. It can overrun into my mage bunker, but it is pretty far. The Feldrak Elder cannot charge the flintlocks with the mage. It can charge the flintlock from the hill, but I will obviously decide to flee. As you can see, I made a grave mistake here on the right, charging the knights. To be honest, I messed up the positioning, and I'm pretty sure that I was able to position it such that the warrior chariot won't be able to counter me. But as I said, it was pretty late, and I made a mistake while reforming, so in the end I just allowed him to charge with the warrior's chariot just to avoid any discussions. What was the worst part of this turn definitely was that I think I got 2 or 3 spells in on the Chimera, and I got the shots on the close range on the Chimera from the flintlocks, but I only did 1 wound. On his turn, he obviously decided to charge the Chimera here, and charge the warrior chariot here, and charge both the Chimera and the warriors into the dogs. But I think at this point, it really depends how Chimera rolls against my flintlocks, but I should be good. The problem is that this block is great weapon ones, so maybe I'm not so sure, and it really depends what happens with the Feldrak Elder. But I think what he does this turn with the Feldrak Elder is nice. He backs off around here, but what he did then was pretty terrible, and you will be able to see that. So let's move to the end of my turn 4. The Kadims slowly grind down those warriors. The Toruks charged the Chimera, and the Lord itself charged this unit here. So basically I was setting up for the Toruks to reach here. The BSB is placed so he can counter the flank, and the unit just wants to make sure that the Feldrak doesn't do much in this matchup. As you can see, the Chimera has 2 wounds left, so that's good. And unfortunately here, the Kadims will just die. So that's the last picture I have from the game. In the end, my Lord killed his Lord. He reduced my Toruk severely, but I killed this unit. The Feldrak Elder, for whatever reason, didn't decide to charge the Citadel Guards. He moved around here and got chaffed by Citadel Guards again. My Citadels managed to kill the Chimera. Chimera managed to do 2 wounds to the Prophet, but this was not enough. And in the end, I managed to kill both of those units with the alchemy. So it ended with the slaughtering of the warriors. I think that if I want to point out to any mistakes on my opponent's part here, is that he basically didn't use his Feldrak Elder. This was the unit that I was fearing the most, because my alchemy basically can't touch him, my units basically can't touch him, and the Feldrak Elder for the whole game did nothing, did absolutely nothing. So that was definitely a waste. And the second point was losing the Sorcerer so early. I think if he just flown him on the other side of the house, then he could have supported the combat in the future turns much more. It was pretty unfortunate that I realized that the Warriors are sloth a bit too late, but in the end it didn't matter, especially because I had the rerolls to wound from alchemy, so that was all good. So again, for the suggestions for the list, as you could have seen in the game, I had a pretty good board control here, but I didn't have much chaff. I think if he played it smarter with his dogs and not give them up very early, I wouldn't have that well of a positioning. Something like double bolt thrower could also be useful against the top Elder Dragon Centaur. I would say that my deployment was pretty crowded and I didn't feel very comfortable with it because the Tauruks were here outside of general and BSB bubble, which didn't matter in this particular matchup. But I think it's pretty hard to fit all the units inside the bubbles, and in some matchups it will be very crucial. I have to say that I enjoyed the Kadims much more when they didn't have Frenzy, because you could run them around the flanks really easily, and they were much more mobile. Now you have to babysit them for the most of the game. You have here some points left in the slot, so if you feel like it, and if you don't feel like the Lord is useful enough, then you always can put your BSB on the Bull, and with 18-inch range, maybe the BSB itself is enough. And with the 18-inch BSB, it's much easier to play the army wider. But here with the flintlocks that basically need to be in the front row because else they can shoot, and with 4 pretty wide close combat units, I think it's definitely too wide. So I would definitely recommend to try to split one of this unit to something more maneuverable. Before we end the video, I have something that I'm considering a fancy list for the Infernal Wolves. I want to try it at some point. I'm not sure if this will work, but basically the idea was that I want to have the Bull and 2x5 Kadim Incarnates. In previous iterations of the rules for the 9th Age, actually it was impossible, I think, to fit 2x5 Kadims and Overlord, since ETC 2016, when we had such crazy builds like 2x Kadims, 2x Lugars, and the Bull. So as soon as the limits came in, then this became really illegal, but at least now you can fit 2x Kadims and the Bull. What is controversial here in this list is the substitution of the usual Essence of Free Mind with Bashaluk Mechanism. I think it's up to you. Maybe the Essence is slightly better here. What I like is having the double breath weapon with the Dragon Staff and Mask of the Furnace. With the Infernal Warriors with blunderbusses really being used as an anvil. A bit board control with the Tauruks and the Hobgoblins. Tauruks also having champions and infernal weapons, so they can support the Overlord and they can a bit fight on their own. I don't know, the list looks pretty interesting. I don't know, it's also a bit like very straightforward and maybe not fancy enough, but I would like to see the blunderbusses work. I would like to see them, because basically when I tried to build a list like this with 2x Kadims and the Bull and something other in core, then it didn't really feel good. It didn't really feel right. Like the flintlocks are okay, but then you had issues with scoring, then you had issues with other things. So in the end I decided to go with blunderbusses because they seem to be pretty decent anvils, and they seem to recompensate the lack of pyromancy in this list, because they have the AP0 shots with the Banner of Relentless Company. They can shoot at very long range, and I just want to see how this goes. So maybe you will be able to find me on UB playing this list or something very similar. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you in the next video. Cheers!